Once upon a time, in a small village nestled among the rolling hills of the Arabian desert, there lived a young man named Farid. He was a simple shepherd, tending to his flock of sheep and goats. His life was not filled with luxury, but it was a life of simplicity, peace, and connection with nature. Farid's heart was pure, and his faith in Allah was strong. Every morning before the sun rose, he would pray his far prayer with sincerity, seeking Allah's guidance for the day ahead. The village where Farid lived was a quiet one, surrounded by tall sand dunes and patches of date palms. The people in the village were humble, living their lives in accordance with the teachings of Islam. Among them was an old man named Sheikh Yusuf, a wise and respected figure in the community. People often came to him for advice and guidance. Farid, being a young man, would often sit at his feet and listen intently to his teachings about the Quran, the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the importance of patience in the face of adversity. One evening, as Farid sat with Sheikh Yusuf under the shade of a palm tree, the old man told him a story that would change his life forever. "Farid," Sheikh Yusuf began, "let me tell you the story of a man who faced trials greater than anyone could imagine. His name was Ayub, or Job, peace be upon him. He was a man of great wealth and prosperity, but Allah tested him with hardships beyond measure. His health deteriorated, his wealth was taken away, and he lost his children. Yet through it all, he remained patient and steadfast in his faith." Farid listened closely, his heart moved by the story of Prophet Ayub. "Even when all seemed lost," Sheikh Yusuf continued, "Ayub did not lose his trust in Allah. He prayed, 'O my Lord, adversity has touched me, and you are the most merciful of those who show mercy.' And Allah, in his infinite mercy, responded to his prayer. He restored his health, returned his wealth, and blessed him with more than he had before." The story of Prophet Ayub left a deep impression on Farid. He could not help but think of his own life. Though it was peaceful, it was far from free of challenges. There were times when he struggled with the harsh desert winds, the scarcity of water, and the endless days of toil. But his faith remained unshaken. As the years passed, Farid grew stronger in his resolve to be patient, no matter the trials that came his way. However, his true test would come one fateful day when the skies above his village grew dark and the winds howled like a storm on the horizon. The rain began to fall heavily, and the once peaceful desert landscape was transformed into a dangerous and tumultuous sea of mud and water. The villagers scrambled to protect their homes, their families, and their livestock. Farid, who was far from home tending to his flock, knew that his sheep would be at risk. Without hesitation, he set off to gather them and bring them back to the safety of the village. As the rain continued to pour, the winds became fiercer. Farid's heart raced as he tried to gather his sheep, but the storm was relentless. The strong winds pushed him off balance, and he was forced to fight the elements with every step he took. After what seemed like hours, Farid finally managed to gather his flock and guide them toward the village. But when he arrived, he saw a sight that made his heart sink. The floodwaters had risen quickly, and the village had been submerged. His family's home, along with the homes of many others, had been destroyed. Farid could hardly believe his eyes. At that moment, Farid was overwhelmed with grief. Everything he had known and loved had been washed away by the unforgiving storm. His family, his home, and his livelihood, all gone in the blink of an eye. But as he stood there, feeling helpless and broken, a thought crossed his mind. He remembered the story of Prophet Ayub and how he remained patient and faithful through his trials. Farid closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and prayed to Allah, seeking strength and guidance. "O Allah," he whispered, "you are the most merciful, and you are the most wise. I trust in your plan, and I ask for patience and perseverance in this time of hardship." As the days passed, the villagers came together to rebuild. Farid worked tirelessly, side by side with his neighbors, to restore what had been lost. Slowly but surely, the village began to take shape again. Despite the immense loss, Farid found solace in the strength of his faith and the support of his community. One evening, as Fard sat alone by the remains of his old home, reflecting on the trials he had faced, he felt a deep sense of peace. The storm had tested his patience, but it had also brought him closer to Allah. He had learned that true faith was not about avoiding hardship, but about trusting in Allah's wisdom and mercy, no matter the circumstances. As the months passed, the village slowly regained its former tranquility. The houses were rebuilt, the crops were planted, and life began to return to a semblance of normalcy. However, for Fard, something inside him had shifted. The storm had taken away much of what he held dear, but it had also given him something invaluable, a deeper understanding of his faith. Fard became more diligent in his prayers, offering each one with even greater sincerity. He no longer saw the daily acts of worship as mere rituals, but as vital steps in strengthening his connection with Allah. The lessons from Prophet Ayub, peace be upon him, echoed in his heart, reminding him that patience and gratitude in times of hardship were the keys to true peace. One day, while walking through the village square, Fard met Sheikh Yusuf once again. The old man, whose wisdom had guided him through so much, looked at Fard with a knowing smile. "You have grown, my young friend," Sheikh Yusuf said softly. "I see the light of patience and humility in your eyes. How has the journey been for you?" Fard bowed his head in gratitude, feeling humbled by the Sheikh's words. "The journey has been difficult, Sheikh. The storm took much from me, but it also gave me something I did not understand before: true faith. I realize now that faith is not just in the good times, but in the darkest moments as well. It is about trusting Allah no matter what." Sheikh Yusuf nodded, his eyes glimmering with approval. "You have learned well, Fard. But remember, your journey does not end here. Life is full of tests, and Allah's wisdom is vast. You must continue to trust in Him, even when the path ahead is unclear." Fard nodded thoughtfully. "I will, Sheikh. I will trust in Allah's plan, even when I cannot understand it." The next few months brought new challenges. A severe drought struck the land, and the crops that had been planted after the storm began to wither. The village's water supply dwindled, and many families began to worry about how they would survive the coming months. The villagers, many of whom had already suffered so much, now faced another trial. One evening, as Fard sat on a small hill overlooking the village, he saw the villagers gathered around, whispering anxiously. It seemed as though hope was beginning to fade, and fear began to spread through the community. Fard, too, felt the weight of the drought pressing upon his shoulders. His flock, which he had worked so hard to rebuild, was also beginning to suffer. The grass was no longer abundant, and the wells were running dry. Yet in his heart, he remembered the words of Sheikh Yusuf. True faith is about trusting Allah, even when you cannot see the way forward. The next day, Fard took his sheep and went further into the desert in search of water. His journey was long and arduous, the sun beating down on him relentlessly. With each step, his faith was tested. Doubts began to creep into his mind. What if there is no water to find? What if all my efforts are in vain? But as the days went by, Fard's resolve grew stronger. He remembered how Allah had provided for Prophet Ayub during his trials, how he had granted him patience and restored him when it seemed all hope was lost. Fard knew that Allah's mercy was boundless and that in his time, he would provide a way. On the fourth day of his search, Fard climbed a small hill to survey the land. In the distance, he noticed a glimmer of something that seemed out of place, a patch of green, far beyond the usual borders of the desert. His heart raced as he hurried toward the site, praying that it was the water he so desperately needed. As he approached the area, he saw a wellspring, its waters bubbling up from the earth. The sight was nothing short of miraculous. It was as though Allah had answered his prayer, providing water not only for his flock but for the village as well. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Fard knelt by the well, raising his hands in prayer. Alhamdulillah, all praise is due to Allah. You are the sustainer, the provider, and the most merciful. Fard knew that this discovery was not just a blessing